Hello there, Robert John Hadfield here in Utah South Studios. And can we speak openly for a moment about these rock bands who are just destroying their legacies? The latest one is one that's actually very near and dear to my heart, and it's Journey. And you don't have to be a Journey fan to appreciate what I'm about to talk about here, because if you follow music, if you're into music, if you're watching this video, you probably are. And we see this happen all the time, but Journey is one of these that's really mastered the art at destroying its own legacy. You know, I was a huge Journey fan. I mean, back in the 80s, I was so into them. And it was actually one of the reasons it matters so much to me and that it's so close to my heart. It was my first concert. The first concert I ever went to was in 1982, and it was on the Escape tour. And I mean, when Journey was just riding high, you know, they were as big as they were ever going to be, and it was on that tour for Escape. And they were, you know, I was a 12-year-old kid, but it was just amazing to me watching these guys. And ever since then, I saw them again in another tour a few years later, but I've just always loved them. You know, they've been this amazing band that just had this great music. And let's be honest for a minute. The reason people liked Journey was Steve Perry. Steve Perry had this just incredible presence. I mean, he just, if you ever saw him in concert, I don't know what it was. He had this magic, and he could grab that entire arena and just have you right with him. It was remarkable being in an arena watching this guy. He was great. Not to mention the fact that his voice is one of the greatest voices in rock music ever. You know, and he's just this beloved performer, and they had so many great songs that they put out. And you know, here's this band that's just on top, selling tons of records, touring, filling places up. Well, then they get into the 90s, and Steve Perry, for whatever reason, is kind of an odd guy, you know, and he has some sort of illness or something that makes him so that he can't tour, really. You know, but they'd actually started messing with their legacy even before this happened, because on the Raised on Radio, Steve Perry himself actually started going in and cleaning house. You know, a few people I think they fired Ross Valerie and Smith, and then they brought these other people in, but you know, Steve Perry kind of came in and took charge because he was the guy. You know, he was the reason that people were listening to Journey. So anyway, getting past that, we get into the 90s, Steve Perry leaves the band, and Neil Schon, who's the one that started Journey, by the way, you probably realize that, says, well, there was a Journey before Steve Perry, and there's going to be a Journey after Steve Perry. And then, what does he do? Well, he immediately goes out and hires a singer, and his name is Steve, I don't know how to say his last name, Aguirre, something like that. Anyway, Steve, he hires this guy named Steve, who happens to sound almost exactly like Steve Perry. And so, you know, here's Neil Schon. We're going to have a Journey after Steve Perry. And I start thinking, not really, because apparently you think you need Steve Perry because you hired a guy that sounds like him. So anyway, so they put out a few albums with him, and it takes away from it a little bit because Steve Perry's gone and they've got this guy. And he's a nice enough guy. I've watched him in interviews. He had a nice voice. He was great. But it doesn't, you know, once again, it's just for people who are big fans, it's a little weird. It's a little tough to take, right? Okay? That sounds so stupid, but it just is. You know, these people were part of the soundtrack of our lives. They were our heroes when we were younger. And then you watch this stuff as they kind of dismantle this thing that they had created. Well, then, for various reasons, he had to leave the band, or left the band, or got kicked out of the band. And then they find this guy that's in the Philippines. His name is Arnel Pineda. So in 2007, there's this guy in the Philippines that happens to apparently sound exactly like Steve Perry. They fly him to the United States. They audition him. Apparently the first day of the audition didn't go very well, but the second day did, and they felt really good about him. And now all of a sudden, this kid from the Philippines is the front man for Journey. So, okay, whatever. You know, you're changing people out. It's a little, you know, none of us really, we'd all like to see Steve Perry back, but at least you're kind of carrying on the music and whatever. Okay. So, which is kind of awkward enough for people that are fans, but we still go see it because we want to hear the music. And of course, a couple of people in the band are original members, and so we just go with it. Well, then, just recently, Arnell tweets this phrase. And what he said on Twitter is he says, "I'm with the band to sing the legacy. If some of them are tired of me being with them, with all means, they can fire me anytime." So what? What kind of internal stuff is going on with this band now that now we're putting it out in the public so that everybody can see that there's some sort of internal conflict in the middle of the band, which is just great for legacy building, right? So, and I got to tell you something. Whatever's going on in that band, I doubt seriously it has anything to do with Arnell. I don't know how many of you, I used to, for several years, I worked with a company that had a lot of employees in the Philippines. And culturally, these are some of the most friendly, cooperative, just great people to work with. You know, it just go along to get along, and they'll do what you ask and get things done and do them well. And I mean, it was a pleasure. Culturally, it's a pleasure working with people from the Philippines. So I doubt seriously whatever kind of internal strife is going on is being caused by him. Well, then what happens is Neil Schon puts out this statement that apparently he is now taking Jonathan Cain, the keyboardist of Journey, to court. And we've got to make sure that everybody in the world knows what's going on. So what Neil Schon does, the only comment I'll make at this time is it's all very unfortunate. I tried for a year to obtain all of our corporate records from John. It's my legal right to see them. I have no choice but to make legal action. I'm paraphrasing here. There's much more. Since I filed, I'll be following my attorney's advice. He's putting this out in the public for all of us to see. And then Jonathan Cain now has to respond to this, and he puts out a statement that says, this is a matter that should have been resolved privately. Really? I'm forced to publicly respond now to Neil's malicious lies and personal attacks on my family and me in an effort to garner public support for his ill-conceived lawsuit. These people, when we were younger, right or wrong, good or bad, when we were teenagers and young and impressionable, these were our heroes. And to grow up now, to be adults, and to watch these people just do this petty, out in the public, silly stuff. Once again, this makes them look so small. You know, these people that to us were just bigger than life, truly bigger than life. And then they go out and you look at this and you go, you people are just kind of, what a bunch of weak people. You know, to go out in the public and start airing their laundry like this, and especially somebody like Neil Schon. Okay, let's put Neil Schon's career in perspective. Okay, let's look at what happened with Neil Schon. Neil Schon is this amazing kind of virtuoso guitar player, in that he just has this natural talent for playing the guitar, and so at approximately the age of 16. Carlos Santana becomes aware of him, hears him play, and so at 16, Neil Schon is going to play with Santana. Now think about that. Carlos Santana is a big deal. I mean, Carlos Santana played at Woodstock. Carlos Santana is known all over the place, and his band is filled with great players, okay? Very well respected. And now Neil Schon, at 16, gets put into Carlos Santana's band. Now I'm not saying he shouldn't have been. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. I'm not saying that any of that. But think about this for a minute. He didn't have to go through all of the headache and work and effort and toil and sweat that most of these other bands do. You know, years and years on the club scene, you know, working double shifts to put out demo tapes, coming up with money to buy. Neil Schon was just plucked up at 16 years old, and he hasn't known anything other than that success as a teenager. So then he's playing with Santana in this really, really successful band. So just handed to him. Once again, I'm not saying it shouldn't have been. Guy's talented, but I'm just saying, but it was literally handed to him, okay? So now, after being in Santana, he and Greg Raleigh, who's also in Santana, decide that they're going to go start their own band. And that band that they go to start is what would become Journey. Okay? So now, Greg Raleigh, Neil Schon go and form this band, Journey. They put out 3 albums. And how hard do you think it was to get that record contract when the two of them are former Santana members? Probably not as hard as the guy playing in the bars in Kansas or Los Angeles or wherever. These guys were already in the business. And he had been since 16, like we already said. So they probably much easier got a record contract. They get this contract. 3 albums later, they're not doing very well. And so now their manager, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking about this because it's so unimportant in the bigger scheme in life, but it's important to me, and it's probably important to other people too because we lived through this stuff, and it was the soundtrack of our lives. So now, 3 albums down in Journey, they're not getting anywhere. So the manager, I think his name is Herbie Herbert, walks in to Journey, to Neil Schon, and says, "Here's your new singer," and hands him Steve Perry. So Neil Schon basically got handed now the new key to his success. He didn't have to go find him. He didn't have to go do anything. He got brought the answer, got brought one of the greatest singers that ever lived and dropped on his doorstep. So now here he has Journey and he has Steve Perry. Steve Perry's dropped in his lap, and then he comes in, sings, and all of a sudden their popularity just starts exploding, getting bigger and bigger. And then, if that wasn't enough, Greg Raleigh kind of gets tired of the whole thing. And what happens? Jonathan Cain from the Babies walks into this band now. They find him and he comes into the band. And what does he do? Well, other than writing them their biggest hits. So Jonathan Cain walks in there, and what song did he bring with him? Open Arms, which ended up being the biggest thing they ever did. So Neil Schon, literally through this entire process, from the time he was 16 years old, like it or not, yes, he had to practice his guitar, for sure. But he's had all this stuff literally handed to him. Once again, not saying he doesn't deserve it, not even feeling bad about it. I don't, it's saying that he shouldn't have it. My point is, this guy has this incredible track record of success. It's amazing what's been handed to him. And so here he is, sitting on what really could have made him this band as legendary as almost any other band that ever existed. But Neil Schon, this is actually, all you kids watching, this is why you don't drop out of high school and go join the circus. Because now, as a grown man, an older guy, he's kind of always been this way in some ways, but he doesn't understand how ridiculous and petty this stuff is. The kind of things that you figure out when you don't run off and join the circus at 16, I guess, apparently. So you start looking at this and you think, you feel kind of bad about all this, that this is happening. And you go, look at these other bands. You know what we're going to do? Okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay, you guys listen to me. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to get a whiteboard. We're going to get a whiteboard. We're going to do it. And we're going to put it right here in the main studio, okay? And we're going to do a series of videos called How to Destroy Your Legacy. Mark my words, we're going to do this, okay? How to Destroy Your Legacy. And we're going to get all the bands we can think of that have done this kind of garbage to ruin where they're on top of the world. And then, yeah, look, I understand that they're still touring and they're making money, okay? And a lot of this stuff becomes a cash grab for these people. But think about what some of these other bands have done. Let's talk about the Police for a second. This was so amazing to me because Sting, I read an article once where he was talking about this, where they were, I think it was on the Synchronicity tour, they were playing 3 nights sold out at Madison Square Garden. 3 nights sold out Madison Square Garden, if I remember this correctly. And in this article, he said that as he was standing on stage and he realized they had sold out 3 nights at Madison Square Garden, he realized that there was only one direction to go at that point. And you know where that is? Down. And so they immediately broke up. That was it. And people look back and go, what the heck happened to the police? They broke up while they were on top. And think about this now. It caused them to be instant legends. If those guys decided to get back together and go on some tour right now, they would fill up anything they wanted to because they were so huge and this legend. And look what happened. So Sting leaves the band and he's able to go out and just have this massive, massive career as Sting. He didn't destroy his legacy. He didn't beat it into the ground like some of these people do. Look at Led Zeppelin, for heaven's sake. You know, Jimmy Page, his entire career is managing the legacy of Led Zeppelin. And he's been pretty smart about it. As a matter of fact, they're notorious for, when people ask to put Led Zeppelin music in movies, they're notorious for not letting people put Led Zeppelin music in movies. They're very selective when they do it because they don't want to they don't want to, once again, destroy their legacy and have music, you know, all over the place and then putting it in silly, stupid places and movies and using it for things that they don't want it used for. And then what else did they do? When John Bonham died, we're done. We're out. And other than a few things where it was Page and Plant, which was great. That was a smart thing to do. Let's not call ourselves Led Zeppelin. We're Page and Plant. And we're going to go on tour and we're going to play music together. When they did the US Festival, I can't remember if I don't think they called themselves, not US Festival, when they did the Live Aid. When they did Live Aid, I don't think they called themselves Led Zeppelin. I could be wrong. But I believe they called themselves Page and Plant, or I'm not sure they called themselves anything. They just went and played that. The only time that I'm sure of that they called themselves Led Zeppelin was that one thing that was, they called it Celebration Day. It was in the 2008 or something like that. I can't remember exactly when it was. That was pushing it, I thought, a little bit. But once again, they didn't tour. They didn't go out and do anything else. They just managed and took care of the legacy and let it ride. It was brilliant to handle it the way they did. And because of it, and why does this matter? Because think about this. Because of the way Led Zeppelin has managed their legacy, and this probably goes for the Police, I'm sure it goes for people like Pearl Jam. Remember Pearl Jam? They realized they were getting way too much attention. They didn't like the way the business of music was working. You know, they did the whole thing with Ticketmaster, but they stopped making music videos. I think it was Jeremy. And they just were like, I think they realized they were about to get overexposed. And they said, nope, no more of this, no more. And now Eddie Vedder is really a legend. And similarly, I think if those guys decided to get back in tour, actually I don't follow them very much, but you've created once again a legend because they didn't just keep beating it and just going and going and going. They knew when to let it go and to get out of the public eye so they wouldn't ruin everything that they'd built. And why is this important? Well, okay, because Journey's still out and they're making money. Yeah, I guess so. They are out making money right now. They're touring. And they're probably playing a few big places. It's all nostalgia stuff, and all of us wish Steve Perry was there if we do go see. I don't go see him because it seems silly to me because Journey is now a Journey cover band. And when Neil Schon says there was a Journey before Steve Perry, there's going to be a Journey after Steve Perry. And then he goes and gets Steve Aguirre, whatever his name was. I mean, think about this too. So Neil Schon says when Steve Perry leaves, he says, well, there was a Journey before Steve Perry, there'll be a Journey after Steve Perry. And then I'm thinking, but then you replace Steve Perry with this guy named Steve Aguirre, whatever his name is, and he happens to sound a lot like Steve Perry. I'm not sure you believe that there's going to be a Journey without Steve Perry, after Steve Perry. So then when he leaves the band, they get this Arnel from the Philippines, who sounds exactly more like Steve Perry than the other guy did, which is basically Journey is now a Journey tribute band. That's what Journey is now. They're a Journey cover band. So getting back to what I was saying a second ago, why is this stuff important? Well, for me personally, I think there's a few reasons. Number one, for those of us that grew up with this stuff, these really, right or wrong, good or bad, these people were our heroes. We were young, we were impressionable. Some of us were in our early teens, late teens, even maybe not even in our teens yet when we first found these people and they kind of became our idols. And then to see that, you kind of want them to still be bigger than life in your mind. You don't want to see them be so small. It feels icky. And I'll give you another interesting example. When I met Paul McCartney a little over a decade ago, and it was one of the most remarkable things that's ever happened to me because Paul McCartney, I'm a huge Beatles fan, and Paul McCartney is supposed to be 10 feet tall, right? I mean, he's this bigger than life character that I've been listening to since I was a little kid. And I'm taller than Paul McCartney. And that was weird to go up and stand next to him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually, this is not right. He's supposed to be this huge, unapproachable human being. The good thing is he was one of the sweetest, nicest, most humble guys in the world. But see, Paul McCartney realizes something that a lot of these musicians don't. And that when you reach a certain level, from a fame standpoint, and it doesn't take much, once you become the hero to somebody, in a weird way, you don't belong to yourself as much as you did before. And I think somebody like Paul McCartney actually realizes that. He looks around and he goes, he wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror and goes, I'm Paul McCartney. I mean, can you even imagine? But he seems to have this sense of, I have to, at this point, rise above all of this stuff. I just have to be, I can't get in the dirt on anything. I don't want to start going off on, like, getting deep into politics and all this other stuff, because I'm, for a lot of these people, this weird rock, the soundtrack of their life. And I have to kind of rise above that at this point in my life. I have to be bigger than that. It's a little bit like if you look at the British monarchy, they kind of have this same, they're born into that world and they kind of have this same attitude, like, I don't belong to myself anymore. I actually belong to the people and I have a responsibility to maintain this stability now. And somebody like Paul McCartney seems to get that. But then you have these other people that don't have this, that don't really recognize, I think, what they meant to a bunch of individuals and to the culture at large. And it doesn't do any good to our culture to watch these people implode and watch them once again destroy these legacies that they'd created. But it's even more than that, and this probably is even on a more selfish point for these people, and I don't know that they're thinking this through. Maybe they are, and I could be an idiot about all this stuff. Granted, I'm an idiot about a lot of things, and plenty of people have already put that in the comments by the time they get to this point, if they get to this point, I'm sure. But Jimmy Page, the way he has managed their legacy, I would imagine that his children, grandchildren, and probably great-grandchildren will be able to live off of the legacy of Led Zeppelin because he's taken such good care of it. And a lot of these people, I really believe that Journey could have been something similar. You get to that point where they were as big as you can get back in the 80s, and instead of figuring out how to let it ride and to be careful about with this legacy and to nurture it, they just keep going and going, and they're bringing these other people in, and now we've got this person, and then now, like I said, they're little more than a Journey tribute band, and it's kind of sad. It's sad to watch it, but you look at that and you think, these people, what is it that's going on? And it's got to be money. It's got to be this incredible desire to just be in front of people, to feel relevant, to feel important, to get that glory back. I don't know. But I watched this, and like I said, and who cares? I'm imagining that that people are watching this thing going, who is this lunatic yelling about Journey? And you're all nodding right now. Well, for those of us that grew up around these people, not around them, but they were part of the soundtrack of our lives. And we were listening to them, and we were studying them, and we were learning these songs and these things. Think about how important music was to you as a teenager. Now, this probably doesn't apply to everybody. I know it applied to me, and I think it applies to a lot of people. I mean, what was music to you back then in the 70s, 80s, 90s? You know, like I said, most of you watching this are roughly my age, or give or take a decade or so, I'd imagine. But what did it mean to you? When I was in high school, I mean, it was these people that sometimes gave me solace. You know, if I was feeling particularly bad one day about something that happened at school, and I was feeling, you know, whether maybe you'd been bullied or something, to be able to go back home and break out some Iron Maiden, or listen to some Led Zeppelin, or listen to some Journey. Sometimes, you know, if you're on the football team, the music was the thing that pumped you up and got you excited. Sometimes it was the thing that got you out of some sort of really heavy depression that you were going through as a kid. You know, you're having trouble with your family or your parents, you don't understand, and it was music, these bands that you would turn to, and you kind of idolized them because it wasn't just that they were the soundtrack of your life. In some ways, they represented your life. You would find a band or bands or musicians that you particularly connected with. And they became almost a friend. You know, somebody that when everything else was challenging, because look, let's be honest, I mean, being a teenager kind of sucks. It was really tough going through all that time. And that's why these people meant so much to us, is that this was the thing that mattered, you know, and making mixtapes for people and picking the right music, and I'm going out on this date and I want this girl to hear certain songs, and I want her to, I mean, there was so much to it. There was so much to music. And so here we are now, and we're watching these musicians like Neil Schon with Journey, just taking that legacy and just beating it up and slicing it, digging a hole and burying it. It's so unfortunate, because there's so many of us that have that nostalgia and you know, have those memories of, man, that was the stuff that got me through so many difficult times. And then to grow up, become an older guy now and look at this and go, that's just, it makes me sad to see that you people are just really pathetic. Anyway, who cares? But you know what? I want to do this, okay? I'm serious. We're going to do this. We're going to get a big whiteboard, and we're going to put it right here in the studio. And we're going to do a series. This is going to be a public service, an altruistic public service to future generations of rock stars, okay? And we're going to talk about these bands that have just wrecked their legacies and what they did, so that future people, future rock stars, can learn from their mistakes and make good decisions about their legacies, okay? Let's do this. And so here's how I need you to help. We're going to do this together. So in the comments, please leave bands, names of bands that you know of that did this, that have just obliterated their legacies. I mean, I can think of a few right offhand, but there's probably tons of them that I'm not even aware of that have done stuff like this. And so let's get a list. Let's put a list together, and then we're going to do it. We're going to come here in the studio, and we're going to start doing a series called How to Destroy Your Legacy. And we're going to talk about all these different groups and what happened and how they just butchered their own legacy, okay? I think that'll be actually really interesting, if not a little bit fun, to analyze that stuff and pick it apart. So let's do that. So anyway, that's what if you're willing to do it, please put some notes down there, a couple of comments about what kinds of bands, the bands that you're aware of that have wrecked their legacies, and this will be kind of interesting. Hey, if you enjoy these videos, which would just amaze me if you enjoy listening to this ranting, but anyway, if you enjoy this stuff, please like, comment, and follow the channel. Whatever platform you're on right now watching this stuff, please follow our channel and subscribe, you know. And also, if you're interested in supporting this crazy stuff that we do here, doing all these record reviews and all this nostalgic stuff, go to audiomover.com and start an order. You know, what we do here in the studio, one of the many things we do here is we do analog to digital media conversion. So we take old audio and videotapes and turn them into digital. And most people have that stuff sitting out there in the garage, in their basement, or if you don't, you know somebody that does, your mom or your sister or somebody like that has old media like that, and you need to archive it. Well, that's what we do here at Audiomover. So if you just go to audiomover.com, and if you don't have any, just tell somebody about us. Put it on Facebook, let people know that we exist, and go to audiomover.com. It's probably somewhere on the screen right now if you're watching this, and start an order. And you know, and it's something that we can help you out with something, and then that's a great way to support this crazy stuff that we do here. Anyway, with that, have a fantastic day.